Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Planet Reddit. Serious, prostitutes, escorts, strippers, other kinds of sex workers. What was your first day on the job like? Did escorting for about a year. First day was relieving. I was terrified at first because I was given the rundown for what redheads to look out for. There were a lot, but I went on. Most of my clients ended up being older men who just wanted a pretty girl to be seen with and to listen to them. My first day felt more like a therapist than an escort. I'm naive to escort related stuff. What about redheads now? Pretty sure that is an autocorrect of red flags. That makes much more sense, and now I feel like an idiot. Wouldn't be the first time I've made a fool of myself around here. A bit intimidating, but not really much different. If anything, I had a little better of an idea of what I was doing compared to working at Starbucks. Yo, for day 5 and I'm doing the whole line and closing a shift myself. All my trainer did was let me drink coffee and read from the manual to me. Ugh, Starbucks. They did that shit to me, and a week after I was hired, the manager of 5 years left the location and was replaced with someone brand new. I quit after 6 months because they called me and tried to make me come in every single day that I was scheduled off. It was awful. Sometimes multiple people in one day. I said no. I liked all the free coffees though. I did it for 3 months straight. They even wanted me to train new people. I was never even officially certified, though I found the pin drawer and signed the certificate myself, and I have the pin. I quit shortly after that though. I worked independently as an escort, so there wasn't really anyone to give me advice on what to expect. I read some websites here and there with general advice and set up a profile. The first few messages were people trying to scam me or looking for free nudes, and eventually somebody came through who seemed genuine. We discussed everything and then set to meet up at his place. Followed up with a phone call as I was setting off to confirm. Seemed a bit shifty over the phone, which made me nervous, and I didn't fully understand the directions to his place. I walked in circles around several apartment blocks being lost and called him nearly in tears because I couldn't figure out where to go. He ended up standing outside his block, so I saw him and he actually looked normal, lol. Slightly balding, wearing a t-shirt and jeans with round face and a kind expression. I can still picture him waving at me and me running towards him like a lost child who just found their parent. Got inside his apartment, ushered him into the shower with me, and then the actual sex part was over fairly quickly. He booked a whole hour and we probably spent 45 minutes just talking about his life, video games and movies we like. The job has its ups and downs, but after that I stopped being so nervous and learned it wasn't as difficult as I thought. Most of my job was just being a good listener and boosting egos, make people feel good about themselves. I'm convinced that a business that just had nice people to share a cup of coffee with would be successful. There's just a lot of lonely people in the world. In Korea they actually have services where a hot girl would bring coffee to your apartment. Then they'd have sex with you, because it was just a cover for prostitution. But still, the business model is nearly there. Man, they can bugger off with their sex. I paid for an hour of talking, not 58 minutes. Was a stripper in my late teens. First day I was nervous as fuck. Some drunk dude walks up to the stage waving a dollar bill and said, "Slap your behind. I'll give you $1." Oddly enough, that made me somehow more comfortable with the whole thing. I actually enjoyed it, and wasn't half bad. Made more money, legally, from $17.20 than any other job I had until like 2 years ago. I'm 37 now. I had a friend at uni who stripped for a while. She was a proper girl next door type girl. Last person you'd expect to do it. She told me she found it empowering, which I never really understood. She also said she wanted to prove to herself she could. I don't know if that was a body confidence thing or something, but regardless, I got the impression she at least didn't hate it. There's definitely a cool power dynamic with you want to touch me, but you can't. So you're paying money just to look at me. Not to mention it takes some cojones to get up on a stage in general. I'm glad it sounds like she had an alright time of it. Not to mention the sheer athleticism it takes to be a stripper. I had a stripper deadlift me one-armed and I weigh about 200 pounds. Escort in a brothel. Edit. Escort is a commonly used synonym for all the other words for full-service sex worker where I'm from. Making a note as there has been some confusion. Honestly, my first day was a mixed bag. The other girl I worked with was hilarious and properly took me under her wing and fed me a glass of wine before my first John to settle my nerves. I haven't drank on the job since that day, but that one drink really helped. I got tipped by one client, behindalted by another. When I was behindalted though, the other worker, the receptionist and my boss all had my back and gave him a proper telling off and barred him. This was a one-off, it hasn't happened since. I've never felt safer in any other job, and I have more control. I walked home that day with more money than I'd earn in a week in my last job. I've never looked back. Do you still work there? Yes, I do. I'm planning on doing more independent work once this pandemic's settled, but my plan has always been to still do a few shifts a month. Sex work can be so isolating, so it's good for the social aspect if nothing else. When you say you'd be going independent, do you mean you'd have a client list and they'd have direct contact with you, or are you going to use a service to find new clients? Stripped briefly to pay for a semester's worth of tuition and books. On my first day, a lady shouted, "Whip out your pecker," and I couldn't help but to laugh from both nerves and the fact she said pecker. After that, the rest seemed pretty easy. Now you have to tell us, how disappointed was she when you whipped it out? Disappointed enough to slip a 50 in my briefs. Edit. Most of the responses have been comparable to this clip, at about 108 minutes in. Hell yeah. I'm long retired now, but I was 21 at the time and at a loose end. New city and no job, so decided to work at a gentleman's club as a prostitute. I'd done my research and been in for an interview, so I was feeling confident and relaxed. No one else showed up on time, so I was the only girl there on the day shift and sat chatting to the receptionists. My first client was a really good looking English Sri Lankan guy who was really sweet and equally nervous. We both couldn't believe it was the other's first time until we were both fumbling and laughing trying to put a condom on correctly. I can't remember who else I saw that day, but I do remember getting paid more than I had earned in a week working 2 jobs. I ended up working for around 7 years and really enjoyed it. That actually sounds really adorable, haha. I'm glad you had a good first experience. I started as a waitress in a strip club. 3 months later I tried dancing. My first time in the VIP, where I had been seeing the workflow for 3 months, so I knew what to say and where to go. But my hands were shaking. The guy even asked me if I was okay. After that first hour it was fine, but my body literally was shaking in the beginning. I didn't feel scared, though. It was a natural reaction. You must have found a nice place if your first dude was genuinely concerned if you were okay with it. It was Bourbon Saint Circus, run by the legendary Bob, one of the best managers I ever worked for, period. He never slept with the girls. He never slept with the girls. I love that this seems to be the highest form of praise for strip club managers. Former exotic dancer of 3 years. The first night was intimidating in part because the other dancers are generally hostile toward new girls. That may have just been the case at that club, I'm not sure, but also because the job itself is so heavily stigmatized that you find yourself afraid that somebody you know will see you. That faded after a few weeks though, and it was actually a really fun job. You should always be careful not to fall into the lifestyle though. Keep work and personal lives separate. 6.9k. Dare I say, nice double edit. 6.9 was a 69 reference, hence the nice. Didn't mean to confuse anybody, sorry. Hostility varies from club to club. The club I work at, the vast majority of the girls are excited to train baby strippers, and the ones that aren't natural born stripper mamas are just neutral towards new girls. Unless you're particularly irritating or stupid, the regular girls are all about taking you under their wing. The fear of seeing someone you know is pretty common among dancers. Even ones that have danced for a while get uncomfortable with it. But the reality is, for most guys, it's a cool factor. You can make a lot of money off people you know. You're more desirable to them because they know you. Strippers deserve some of the stigma. The nature of the job attracts train wrecks. It's very unique in the level of flexibility and freedom that you have. So it's a natural fit for women who struggle with maintaining any kind of stability. Decide you want to pack up and road trip for shits and grins. Wherever you stop, there's probably a club you can work at to make money to pay for the road trip. Don't feel like working? Just don't show up. You may have to pay a fee the next time you come in. But you're making enough money that do you really care? So the ratio of degenerate ucks to normal people is higher than it is in any other industry. And because they often move around and don't need to maintain good relationships with everyone, you get some cutthroat and ruthless girls. But you also have a lot of nice girls that enjoy the attention and power, and who wouldn't love the money? So while I get the mentality of don't trust strippers, I think it's unfair to the relatively normal people who dance for a living. Kind of like any other stereotype. Strippers deserve some of the stigma. The nature of the job attracts train wrecks. It's very unique in the level of flexibility and freedom that you have. So it's a natural fit for women who struggle with maintaining any kind of stability. I have never been able to express this in words, and somebody finally did. I never wanted to say that all the girls were bad people, cause I knew some decent ones, but some others were pretty out there. Thank you for giving me the words for it. I've been working in the industry for about 5 years now, so at this point, basically all my friends are strippers or strip club employees, and my wife is a stripper. But while we have a pretty nice club, very strict on no drugs or prostitution, and we've got a very harmonious dressing room, there are still girls I don't want to be friends with outside of work. I call them fairies, because they flit about with never a thought of tomorrow and often end up getting caught up in all kinds of silly drama. I'm an old man. Drama is not my thing. I was a cam girl for a little bit. First time was with my roommate. She had been doing it and I knew she was a cam girl. She was making more in one night than I was from babysitting like 4 times a week. It was really awkward at first, but my roommate was a pro and played into it. First time lesbian sorta thing. Those tokens were flying in. Despite it being awkward, it was fun and we made a lot. So I started my own account, became a cam girl. Any tips starting out? It's hard at first. Building up clients isn't the easiest thing. Some night you'll spend hours on cam and won't make much. Some nights you'll kill it without even trying. Find something that makes you stand out. A kink, unique personality, or unique talent. I look really young and I'm very small. It might sound gross, but my market was guys into DDLG and playing the part of little girl. What websites would you recommend using to stream? Join our community Discord, link in description. Terrifying. I was 21 years old and had never even stepped foot inside a strip club. I had bought a matching bra and underwear set from Marshalls along with regular heels. Big mistake. I was told to watch the dancer before me on stage, who of course was gorgeous and clearly knew what she was doing. I went up there and immediately busted my behind because of the normal sized heels. The rest of the time was just spent holding onto the pole for dear life and hoping I wouldn't get fired for being the worst dancer they'd ever witnessed. I wasn't fired and eventually got the hang of everything, but I still cringe at how awful those first initial days were. What's the difference in regards to heels? Stripper heels or stilettos, although they are very tall and look much scarier to walk in, are actually so much easier because the front of them have a bigger, square platform, so it makes it easier to balance when walking dancing. It makes a huge difference. I can't even walk in normal heels if that tells you anything. I used to wobble in 4-inch regular heels, but 7-inch pleasers I first bought were so much easier to manage for me. I was so surprised. Former male stripper here. It was awesome. It was comedic, sexy, and fun. Just an absolute party. The crowd had a blast. We quintuple lap danced the bachelorettes. It didn't pay much, but I wasn't really in it for the money. I would totally start another show if I can make it happen. I only had 2 brief uncomfortable moments that night. First, an old woman just grabbed my goodies. Second, another old woman shoved $1 so far between my cheeks that I didn't see it until after the show. She was making a deposit. Sounds more like a victory bond. He didn't see that shit for a whole while. Terrifying. My rent was due soon and I felt there was no other option, so I went straight to Craigslist offering sex. I was well aware of the possibility that I could be putting myself in serious danger, but at the time, getting my rent in on time was my only worry. I was advertising in a murder capital city. I hated it. I hated every man I encountered in sex work afterward, and I try not to think about that time in my life. I assumed that because I was already very promiscuous and used to having sex with strangers that it wouldn't be so bad, but it's so much worse when you can't be picky. There's a reason those kind of men pay for sex. They tend to be creepy and unattractive to the point that buying sex is the only way they can get a woman to look at them. I'm sure I'll get downvoted. Reddit hates when I talk shit about prostitution because everyone has this wonderful, idealized picture of it in their heads, while I spent years drinking heavily just to get the images out of my own head. I ended up going to trade school and I now have a well-paying, exciting career in factory labor, but I wouldn't trade it for any kind of sex work. I actually enjoy my job, and I get to gladly tell any man that tries hitting on me there to go up yourself with an airline. Edit. Remove the news story because it is identifying. Thank you to all those who have given me awards. Also, I understand the flack I'm getting for calling these men unattractive. I have had wonderful, consensual, satisfying sex with many traditionally unattractive men. However, I have no love for my former clients, who I found ugly inside and out. Really appreciate your honesty. This shouldn't be about saying what makes other Redditors feel better. This is about you sharing your personal experience and how it affected you. Finally, someone not glorifying it. I am so sorry to hear it though, and I hope you are doing well now. I wasn't a pro, but when I was 16 and homeless, an older gentleman offered me a serious chunk of money for a weekend. He thought I was 14. I was hunger skinny, so it was believable. He had a hotel room, bought me some clean clothes and makeup, and left me alone for a few hours to get the street off of me. When he got back, he threw out my old clothes and took me to dinner. I spent 3 days with him and none of it was terrible. I wasn't living my best life at the time, so the bar was pretty low. He was polite to me and wasn't rough. He let me drink in the evenings but never let me get drunk or high, and had me call him dad in public. He told me it was because it would look odd otherwise, but I called him a normal name that I'm sure wasn't his real name when we were alone, so it didn't feel particularly predatory. I never told him my name, so he called me Anna. We went out during the days, sometimes to eat or shop, once to the zoo, and sometimes I'd stay at the hotel while he went out. He didn't tell me much about himself and his life. Lots of old anecdotes from his younger years, and silly stories. He liked me to tell him about my life. Stupid teenage garbage about my friends and parents. What kinds of things I liked and why. When we parted, he gave me a bit of cash, but used most of the money we agreed on to get me a motel room for a month. He talked about being worried about how I was living. Beyond the money I earned, he spent a bunch on groceries and toiletries that I didn't see until after he left, so I couldn't thank him. But I felt more cared for by this stranger who paid an underage girl for sex than anybody else in my life. He also extended my stay with management for another 2 weeks. The owner came to my door and told me not to check out yet. For context, this was in Canada and was very illegal. Edit. Thanks for the gold. It's never happened before. I don't know what to do. I'll dedicate a song to my anonymous benefactor when I'm next singing in the shower. This makes me so sad. 16 is so young already, but that he thought you were 14. I am glad that you were able to get yourself out of an awful situation though. I hope you're well. Please don't feel sad for me. I'm really okay now. And even at the time I didn't have it that badly. The situation is super creepy and wild, but I don't believe that it harmed me at all. And better me than someone who might have been hurt by it. Right? I made a lot of shit choices, and some decent ones, and that occurrence changed my life for the better. Not that I would recommend it to anyone. I'm so conflicted because either you were 14, which is awful, but other than that, he seemed like he was a generally caring person towards you. The pedo with a heart of gold. Dancer here. I remember being chill and excited about it. This was 20 years ago. The next few times were a little more nerve-wracking because what does an 18-year-old have to say to middle-aged men, you know? Took me a while to get comfortable. Now I'm a pro and can't wait till the clubs open again. I knew what it would be like going into it. I'd been working for the agency for a few months as a driver, taking the girls to their appointments, making sure they didn't get robbed or killed. My boss mentioned that he had had some interest from females wanting a male escort. I'd seen Deuce Bigelow. I figured, why the hell not? I was 18. and I cleaned up pretty nice. My first client was a woman in her late 30s. Not a supermodel, but not unattractive at all. She was in town for some auto parts convention and wanted someone to show her around. We wound up sleeping together after. I got my money and left the next morning. I did that until I moved out of state 3 years later. Was it ever difficult to perform? I would be mortified if I couldn't get it up for a paying customer. But it's not like we can just pretend to be aroused. There were times when it was difficult to perform. Not every woman was attractive, but the vast majority were mid to upper level executives, well groomed, reasonably in shape. My agency catered to a higher class of clientele, and it's not like every woman wanted sex. A lot of times they wanted a companion who knew the area. Detroit wasn't always the safest place. Easy to take a wrong turn and end up in a very unsafe place. I need a guide, security guard, maybe a little anal. Nerve-wracking. It was professional, but I was 21. It was just me and him, and he had to drive me to another location. But he was super nice and realized real quick I was nervous. So he talked to me the whole way there. He even made jokes while we were switching positions. Face rolling on the floor laughing. A fun guy. I would keep going in that line of work, but a friend caught chlamydia, so I was out. I'm 21 and was an oil wrestler for a short time just last year, and I was terrified. I had no practice or was shown anything. I made $10 in tips that night, but as it went on for the next 3 weeks, I began making more. The girls were really clique-y and at times total BHS. The men we entertained were disgusting low hygiene cowboys and rude as uck. Not my scene, but nothing but respect for the women who are able to have fun in that environment. Is oil wrestling a legitimate contest of skill? Or is the outcome predetermined? Depends. One of the girls liked to actually use skill, and we entertained her because most of the time the moves hits were predetermined. This girl though, I still have a scar on my eye from us bashing heads. Hers is on her cheek. She always won though. It was liberating. I was nervous at first, but all smiles afterward. Being a guy, I probably had different experiences. I was awkward looking even through my early 20s. I decided to become a rent boy when I realized there was a certain subsect of older gay gentlemen who appreciated the way I had aged and carried myself. I did it for about a year or so until I met my husband. All in all, I made some money and walked away feeling better about myself. Is there a market for straight men in your experience? Asking for myself. Short answer, of course. I think the feds shut down Rent Boy, so I'm not sure what took its place. Old gay people will pay tons for young men. Just make a profile on a popular gay hookup dating app and you will have offers within hours. Even when you explicitly write nobody older than 25 please, or something like that, and they do pay handsomely. Offers are in the hundreds to thousands depending on age and looks. And a gay friend of mine hinted me he knows some who took the offers and made a lot. First job in the industry was a sexting operator for a dating website. I found out it was a scam. I was basically a bot and never got paid for talking to people. LOL, they owe me at least $120. I hope their site is exposed one day. Edit. First day was weird. I had to cater to a bunch of random guys. There was no training. Just thrown into random chats with random guys. I basically made up nonsense to keep the convo going so they could buy more credits to make the website rich while we get nothing. I was basically the person that was like, don't you like talking to me? Why won't you buy more credits then? Edit 2. Oh, I also forgot to mention. I remember feeling really weird the first day because as bots we had access to a bunch of random women's nudes. They looked like amateur stars or something, but I remember being like, who are these women? It just felt wrong. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.